Hello and welcome to another Daily Muppet. In today's video, we're going to talk about, of course, the takeover. What else? Talk about some of the news that's going out there right now about transfers, if there's substance to, the depth or the advancement of these reports on certain players and certain targets, including Min Jae, Rabiot, and others. And then we will also talk about the budget and a few other things. So let's take a look at it overall. So with regards to the takeover, just to kind of get into it, the thing that people I think still aren't grasping, or that they don't believe at the moment, and this takeover is not done yet. And let me 1 second. All right. Sorry about that. So, this takeover is not done yet, but the thing that people have not really kind of grasped is that the Avram Glazer and Joel kind of dug their heels in a bit on all of this. They're not the smartest people. And one of the things that I mentioned is that when we've talked over the last year about how they have to sell, it's been almost a year now, maybe 9 months, about how they have to sell, realize what that means. Why do they have to sell? They have to sell if they want to improve the stadium. They have to sell if they want to fund the training ground. They have to sell if they're going to be able to fund the things that need to get done in order for the club to reach the heights that it needs to. That is not the same as they have to sell because the club is going to go bankrupt, okay? It's not the same thing. They did not have to sell. They could kick the can down the road. And the thing that has to be realized, and that still I don't think is grasped by many people, but it is important, maybe here most people are, but obviously across other platforms, people are just not getting the basics of this. Right now, as it stands, without this offer from Sir Jim Ratcliffe that would allow the Glazers to stay for maybe 2 years, maybe 3, they would not be selling. They would kick the can down the road. We'd have a summer of limited to no budget. They'd come back to it next year, reopen the process, keep, when interest rates on loans, on financing go down, that also opens the door to, right now loaning is expensive, partial investment's expensive. Trying to get a $2 billion loan to repackage the debt and add on the stadium is expensive. Interest rates are high. In a year, that may not be the case. If they can last another year, they may be thinking, hey, we could repackage all this debt, get some new debt at more favorable interest rates as rates come down. They will come down. There's so many factors that go into this. It is dangerous to allow the Glazers to be in charge any minute longer than they already are. But they were ready to kick the can down the road, keep saying, look, if you're not going to give us our $5.5, $6 billion minimum, then we're not going to sell at all. So Jim Ratcliffe's offer is not an offer of, because of this, other offers aren't being accepted. It's an offer of this is the only way to wrestle control from the Glazers out. And that's why that is. And people have to grasp that. That is the fact of the situation. The sale was not occurring without that. That's why there was more bids, more rounds, more all of that. This sale was going to be delayed. And if it was going to be delayed another year, well, then a buyout in 2 years makes no difference, does it? It's the same thing. So it's better to get it done now. What I have to say right now is that there are and continue to be talks occurring. As far as the side that I hear from, which is generally on the Ineos side, they do believe, or at least I'm not saying that they all have this information, but it is believed by people in high places with regards to Ineos that they've been told they have the best offer, that they expect theirs will move ahead, and that it is very close to being concluded. That's it. That's all I can say about it at the moment, but that's where they feel it is at. Again, that comes from one side, that comes from one area, but obviously, as we discussed that last week, that news coming from people who are, and I would consider to be very reliable on this situation, should certainly be taken to heart. And, realize that some people are saying, well, if that is the case, how come they haven't selected the preferred bidder? How come they haven't gone with Ineos? Well, it's the same thing as anything. When you have a property where there's not a lot of potentially buyers, but there's also not a lot of properties, if you go and say Ineos in exclusive talks, they're going to get it, all of that, realize what happens. All your other buyers are gone. They leave. Qatar leaves. Your minority investors leave. All of them leave. They're done the minute you do that. And what if the deal falls through? What kind of negotiation position does that put you in if you've selected a preferred bidder and then the deal falls through? That puts you in a very weak standing where you're crawling back to Qatar or these other people with your tail between your legs saying, it fell through with Ineos, oh my God, it's not going to work. And they say, well, $5 billion, $4.5 billion, we're going to lower our offer, take it or leave it. You come back in a worse negotiation position if they keep quiet and they don't say much until they are sure the deal is happening. Then if it does fall through with Ineos, if it doesn't happen, it's not going to be it fell through. It'll just be, Qatar, you're still in the race. Do you have any means to improve your bid? That's it. They come with a much stronger negotiation position, so they're all going to be fairly careful about what they say until the deal is totally agreed. As of now, you can say they haven't ruled out Qatar, they haven't ruled out Elliott, they haven't ruled out minority investment, they haven't ruled out anything. And that's the reason why you don't want to kick these buyers off, and that is the simple reason for it. And that's what Ineos believe as well, is obviously they're not going to want to turn away backup buyers and other bids until they are sure they have a deal done, and there's still details to be agreed here. It is not finished. With Chelsea, there was 4 groups, I think, in at the end, maybe 3, who all had equal bids. It was a government-mandated sale. There was no option of not selling. Everybody knew you were going to have to sell, so nobody was going to leave. And so it was more necessary to go into that exclusive bidder negotiation status and say, we're talking with this party to work through it, the details of it, because the other parties weren't going to leave. They knew Chelsea had to be sold. So if it fell through with Todd Bowley's group, for example, they knew they're still in the race. They could still sell. It's still going to happen. And so it was also very quick at that time. They'd already done owners and directors tests. They'd already done all sorts of things. So it was very safe to move forward in a preferred bidder status with one of the parties. It's not really safe to do that with the with Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos in this situation now. So I don't even personally necessarily expect a preferred thing. I think that there were some articles from the Telegraph and such ahead of time that said it may not even go that way. I expect that either in the next few days or by end of the week, they say, we're ironing out final details with Ineos as the new buyers of Manchester United, or, there's some problem that comes up. But I don't know that it's going to go into, preferred bidder status. If it goes into preferred bidder status, or that's how it's announced, you would have to imagine that is at a stage where it's done, essentially. And they're literally signing, doing the legal aspects of it. And that would be the expectation. So that's where things are at. In terms of timing, I don't know. No, I don't think anybody knows the exact amount of time. I know that it was very interesting that Avram has been in London for days. Let's see. Yeah, it's been days. And, he's been there for days. When he came out to Wembley last time, earlier in the process, he came the morning of, flew out that evening. It's been days. He's half a mile he's staying in Mayfair. I understand it's the city center, but he's staying half a mile from Rain's office and the United London offices. And so I think it's fairly significant that talks are occurring and happening at the moment. So we're just going to have to keep a close eye on things. From Ineos' side, they still feel it is very close. And I don't think we're going to be able to give more detail than that until everybody wants it to, because nobody's really briefing from Ineos' side either. So it's just the small hints of information I get from someone I speak with. Moving on to this, there's a lot of rumors about Min Jae, and I didn't really bite on those. One of the things that people aren't getting, and this applies to the sale, this applies to transfers, I'm not retweeting and sharing stuff unless I think it's true. I'm not an aggregator. On Twitter and these areas, that's not what I'm here for. I don't talk about the things on here unless I think they're true as well, and then I will tell you the context of it, because I'm not an aggregator. My job isn't to share every piece of news. I do this because I try to align what I know with news that's out there to present hopefully a more accurate picture. Here's what's true, here's what's not true, here are the things that make sense, here's what I can add to it, here's what I know, all of that. That's what I do. And so that applies to the sale, it applies to transfers. The Kim Min Jae stuff is a bit overblown because United are not in a position to make offers. And Fabrizio Romano tweeted that last night, and I retweeted that and said I believe this to be a much more accurate assessment of the current situation, as United aren't in a position to be making offers as of yet. The finances are still somewhat held up until this sale is done. There's been some hints from inside to me that they have a little bit more leeway to start making moves and doing things, but they cannot yet continue to make that offer. And we'll talk about budget in a minute, but you're not going to be seeing offers for 50, 60 million prior to the striker situation being sorted, prior to sales, and prior to the takeover situation being sorted. Striker's the only non-contingent position. There's not the budget to go spend all this money on other positions until that is sorted out. There's a lot of interest in Kim Min Jae, though. So keep that in mind. I'm not saying that we won't sign Kim Min Jae. I think there's a good chance of it later on this summer, but as of now, it's currently overblown as it stands. Goalkeeper, obviously, you've seen a bit of talk continue to kind of hash out over the last week or so that potentially, they're going to be looking at a new keeper. More talk of David Raya, as Brentford are in advanced signings, I guess, to sign somebody else. And so David Raya could be available, 30 to 40 million. There's a lot of keepers available. Obviously, there's more talks of United scouting Diogo Costa, who is the number one choice. Again, similar to the center back situation, how far does the budget stretch? What gets spent on striker? What gets spent elsewhere? Briefly on striker, obviously there's a lot of talk still about Harry Kane, about Osimhen going to, potentially Chelsea looking at him. Harry Kane being the main target. Again, it's very up in the air. All of this still is very up in the air on that. But that is still going to be first before you see these big offers at other positions. Midfield names, there's been a lot of talk about this week, and there's a couple things I want to comment on, and then I have a little bit of information of my own. Declan Rice, there was some stories, Declan Rice definitely in the race with Arsenal. It makes sense. Declan Rice, a player, I think you sign him, you solve it. You don't need more than one midfielder. You sign Declan Rice. He can cover Casemiro. We can play as more of your carrier 8 up the pitch and into attacking areas. He's a press monster. He's a ball winner. He's a solid passer these days and a fantastic on-ball player. He is the perfect balance to the midfield to creating a strong and dynamic front. Would be a great player. You can see why they'd want him. He would kind of solve all the problems in one. And obviously for the cost, you would need that. There was talk of Rabiot on a free still, and I think that there's some legitimacy to that as well. I think some of it is him, potentially angling to get a new contract and some stuff like that with Juventus. But the interest was there, obviously, as we know, and so it'll likely continue to be there. He's one where you make that signing, you probably also need a deeper midfielder or a more attacking midfielder, depending on how you feel about things. On a free, obviously that frees up more money. Part of it is preparing for different scenarios. What is the budget? Who can you sell? You got to have options. I think they would definitely sign Rabiot, if they cannot spend a lot of money in the midfield because of other things that are going on. The same with someone like Yuri Tielemans. Way down the list, I don't think he fits that well. It does not work, does not press. But similar idea. If you needed to be signing someone on a free and you end up down the list to them, these are good options. Another name, obviously we talked about before that United were very interested in and that Liverpool kind of jumped ahead on is Alexis Mac Allister. Now, from what I hear don't write off Alexis Mac Allister and United yet. Just don't. There was news obviously about Champions League and preferring Champions League from a good source, but this is kind of separate to that. United need this takeover to happen quick. They need this to be resolved quick. But don't write off Alexis Mac Allister and United's story yet. Okay? That's all. That's all I'll say right now, but don't. And then in terms of budget, Mark Ogden went on the United Stand channel to do an interview today and says that he believes the budget to be currently around, £100 million. I think that's about right. At the moment, there's no hard budget numbers still. It's a lot about FFP, things like that. But £100 million is generally about right. It's about what we have to spend on a striker. You see, and the point being, if that's what we can spend non-contingent, you can't be signing Min Jaes and goalkeepers and making these offers until you get the striker situation sorted, because you need sales and you need boosts to revenue and you need Champions League to confirm and raise the budget from there. But that is probably accurate to about what United can spend without everything else getting resolved, if that makes sense. Okay? Without other things being resolved, i.e. sales and all of that, that's essentially the situation. So that is what we were looking at. That's what's going to be kind of happening. So then, $100 million on the budget. Think with that before everything else can be resolved. That's probably about right. It's the striker. You can buy a striker non-contingent. It's probably what it's going to cost to get one of the ones we want. And, unless we fail with all the targets and move down the list to someone like Holland, Victor Roque, Balogun, who's leaving Arsenal likely, good player as well. United were interested years ago. So just something to bear in mind. The striker situation has to be resolved because it'll probably use up the whole budget. There is accuracy to that. Okay? So thank you for watching. I'll definitely be including details further through the week as I hear more on different subjects and different things, especially obviously the takeover. We are expecting to hear things in the next few days on this. I don't have a detail as to, like last time I said by Tuesday night, they're expecting to get feedback and things like that. But I do know they feel that it is close to being resolved. Okay? That's all I can say. And hopefully it doesn't fall through because, look, whoever you want, if it falls through with Ineos now, this could be a long situation that may not be resolved this year at all. So that's where I'm at. Thank you for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn notifications on. See you in the next video.